In the opening stages of the Second World War, the Allies faced a strategic nightmare. They were struggling to survive the German Blitzkrieg, a lightning war synchronizing panzers and dive bombers to shatter defensive lines before they could even form. The early Allied response was the opposite of lightning. Their command structure relied on a rigid, bureaucratic caution, moving troops methodically and slowly, often ceding the initiative to the enemy in an attempt to minimize risk. General George S. Patton arrived as the ultimate disruptor. He held a singular, uncompromising conviction that war was an offensive to be forced, and that every second spent defending a position was a second wasted. The German High Command quickly identified him as a unique threat. While they viewed other Allied commanders as predictable, they saw Patton as volatile and relentless, eventually branding him the General of Blood and Steel. His success wasn't the result of a lucky temperament. It was a calculated doctrine designed to outpace, outfit, and outdiscipline the Axis war machine. Patton's first rule was to prioritize speed over the chain of command. He argued that tanks should never be tethered to slow-moving infantry. Instead, they had to act as independent cavalry, designed to punch through a line and keep moving until the enemy's rear was exposed. This approach created immediate friction during the invasion of Sicily. Patton was forced to coordinate with Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, whose insistence on a slow, careful advance left the Allied front stalled and predictable. Sensing a vacuum, Patton chose insubordination. He ignored his standing orders and launched a high-speed, unauthorized sprint toward the city of Palermo, leaving his own superiors scrambling to catch up to his position. From Palermo, he didn't wait to consolidate. He immediately hooked his armored units eastward along the coast, racing into the port of Messina and securing the island hours before the British forces arrived. This wasn't just about winning a race against an ally. By moving faster than the military bureaucracy expected, Patton proved that speed itself was a weapon, one that could secure massive strategic objectives before the enemy had time to react. The second component of his success was a commitment to relentless aggression. Patton believed that once an attack started, it's a never stop. To him, a pause wasn't a rest, it was an invitation for the enemy to rebuild their defenses. To maintain this constant motion, he mastered combined arms. He ensured his armor was never alone, integrating fast-moving tanks with immediate air support and motorized infantry that could mop up resistance without slowing the main advance. Operation Cobra, the breakout from the Normandy beaches, became the ultimate showcase for this synchronized violence. Patton turned his divisions with predatory speed, executing an enveloping maneuver that trapped roughly 60,000 German soldiers in what became known as the Falaise Pocket. The sheer pace of the pincer caused a total collapse of German organization. Those who weren't captured were forced to flee, leaving the roads of France littered with the shattered wreckage of an army that simply couldn't run fast enough. This wasn't a battle for territory. It was a battle of annihilation. By refusing to let the enemy breathe, Patton didn't just push them back, he destroyed their ability to function as a coherent fighting force. For Patton, these complex maneuvers were only possible through extreme, often brutal discipline. He was notorious for a harsh leadership style, believing that a soldier who was more afraid of his general than the enemy would never hesitate during a crisis. That crisis arrived during the Battle of the Bulge. A surprise German winter offensive smashed into the Allied lines, leaving American units isolated in the freezing woods of the Ardennes. With the 101st Airborne surrounded in Bastogne, Eisenhower asked Patton how long it would take to reorganize his army to rescue them. Patton's reply was immediate: now. Executing a 90-degree pivot with an entire mechanized army in a blizzard is a logistical nightmare. It required thousands of drivers and mechanics to work through the night in sub-zero temperatures, moving tons of steel over icy roads without a single major breakdown. The Third Army didn't just arrive, they broke through. They marched directly into Bastogne and shattered the German offensive before it could reach the coast. Critics called his discipline tyrannical, but the Ardennes proved its utility. The logistical impossibility of that pivot worked because Patton had spent years drilling his men to operate at a standard of perfection, where the impossible was simply the expected norm. By the time the Third Army reached Czechoslovakia, the metrics of the campaign were staggering: 210,000 square miles liberated and over 500,000 prisoners taken, all while sustaining a fraction of the casualties seen in more cautious units. However, the exact traits that made him a genius in combat, his bluntness, his aggression, and his unyielding nature, rendered him a liability in the post-war world. Patton's lack of diplomacy led to open clashes with high-ranking allies, including Soviet Marshal Georgy Zhukov. His refusal to play the role of the administrator led to his demotion and eventual political exile. His life ended with a tragic irony. After surviving years of high-intensity combat, he died in December 1945, following a low-speed automobile accident in Germany. Patton is buried in Luxembourg, alongside the soldiers he commanded during the Battle of the Bulge. He left behind a doctrine that transformed the American army, proving that in the age of mechanized war, the ultimate advantage isn't found in the thickness of your armor, but in the momentum of your attack.